Imagine a narrow corridor, lined with metal walls that echo with every footstep. At the very end, there's a single door. Its number, B340, is barely visible, peeling from years of salt, time, and something darker that refuses to fade. Guests who've stayed here all tell the same story. Something wakes up when the lights go out. Doors slam shut on their own. Sheets pull tight, as if someone invisible is crawling into bed beside them. And from inside the wall, there's a scratching sound. Security guards say some guests didn't even last the night. They ran down the hallway screaming, pale as ghosts, swearing that someone was inside the room, even though they were completely alone. When the Queen Mary was turned into a hotel, this was the only cabin sealed off from the public. For decades, no one was allowed inside. Not guests, not even staff. Room B340 became a legend, a whispered dare among crew members, a story told in the dark corners of the ship's bar. But legends always have roots, and to understand what's happening inside that room today, you need to go back to when the Queen Mary wasn't a tourist attraction, but a warship, a floating fortress, and the stage for some of the most violent deaths ever recorded at sea. Start the timer. Let's see how long you'd last inside room B340. Before it became a haunted hotel floating in Long Beach, the RMS Queen Mary was once called the Grey Ghost. Built in 1936, she was luxury on the surface. Polished mahogany, gold-trimmed dining rooms, chandeliers that could blind you. But beneath that glamour, the ship carried something heavy, a reputation for bad luck that followed her from the moment she touched the water. When World War II broke out, the Queen Mary was stripped of her velvet carpets and champagne glasses. She was repainted a dull grey, turned into a troop carrier capable of moving 15,000 soldiers at once. In her belly, there was no music, only the echo of boots, the clatter of metal trays, and the smell of sweat and diesel. The men on board called her a floating coffin. Superstition spread fast. They said the ship herself didn't want to serve the war. And then, tragedy proved them right. In October 1942, during a military convoy, the Queen Mary accidentally sliced through one of her own escorts, the HMS Curacoa, cutting the smaller ship clean in half. Over 300 British sailors died in the water that day. Orders were strict. The Queen Mary couldn't stop. If she did, she'd risk being torpedoed. So she kept going, her propellers still turning while hundreds of men screamed below. Survivors later said they could still feel the vibrations of the dying ship through the Queen Mary's floors. From that day forward, the crew whispered that the souls of those sailors never left. They were trapped, scattered through the metal and corridors, echoing forever inside her hull. The ship didn't stop claiming lives. Mechanics were crushed by closing watertight doors. A cook was found locked in a walk-in freezer. A young sailor was decapitated by door 13, a massive steel bulkhead on the lower decks, the same deck where B340 would later be sealed. Passengers vanished mid-voyage. Some jumped overboard after claiming they'd heard voices calling their names. Others were found drowned in their cabins with no sign of forced entry. Each time, the logs noted the same thing, unexplained. After the war, she was refitted for luxury again. The lights, the laughter, the cocktails returned. But something was off. Crew members said tools went missing, cold spots followed them below deck, and sometimes the elevators moved by themselves. Guests began complaining about knocking from the cabin next door, only to discover the next cabin didn't exist. When the Queen Mary retired in 1967 and was turned into a hotel, workers found that one room, B340, was in worse shape than any other. Walls stained, furniture overturned, and on the inside of the door, deep scratches, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. From then on, the ship's managers made a decision: seal it. No entry, no cleaning, no explanation. But curiosity doesn't stay locked forever. When the Queen Mary finally opened its doors to the public in 1971, visitors could tour nearly every corner of the ship, every corridor, every ballroom, every engine room, except one, B340. For years, it stayed locked. No number on the wall, no listing in the guest directory, just an unmarked door in a forgotten passageway. It became the ship's forbidden heart, and as time passed, the stories grew darker. The first time anyone officially entered room B340 after it was sealed was sometime in the late 1980s. A small group of night shift security guards decided to break protocol. They wanted to prove the ghost stories were nonsense. They unlocked the door, stepped inside, and immediately regretted it. One of them reported that the air felt charged, like before a lightning strike. Another said the temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds, and then the lights went out. According to their written statement, a figure flickered in the corner of the room. Tall, shadow thin, head tilted. It didn't move, it just watched. When the emergency lights came back on, the table was overturned and the key was missing from the lock. They found it later, inside the drawer, even though no one had opened it. After that night, the guards refused to go near that deck again. In 1992, a psychic medium named Eleanor Riggs was invited aboard for a tourism segment. She was told nothing about the ship's history, only that there was one special room. When she reached the door of B340, she froze. She described it as a wall of screaming energy and said she heard the name Howard repeated over and over, like a broken record. Her notes from that night read, "He doesn't know he's dead. He keeps reliving it. The door, the crush, the water." Many believe she was channeling John Pedder, the sailor crushed by door 13 in the 1940s. Same deck, same alignment. Some even claim B340 was converted using parts from that same bulkhead section, metal that still carried the trauma of his death. When the room was finally reopened to paying guests decades later, management downplayed the legends. They called it an immersive paranormal experience. But what happened next forced them to rethink that marketing plan. The very first woman to spend the night in B340 checked out at 3 a.m. She told staff the blankets were ripped from her body, not slid or pulled, ripped as if by claws. Another guest woke up to find the bathroom light on, the faucet running red, rust-colored water, they said, and the words, "Help us," written in the fogged mirror. Within 6 months, the hotel had received over 50 incident reports tied to that single room. Staff began refusing to clean it alone. The cleaning checklist now required 2 employees at all times, and the door had to remain open while they worked. Even then, several quit mid-shift, saying they'd heard someone whispering their names. In 2008, one of the ship's overnight cameras captured something that still circulates on ghost forums today. At 2:37 a.m., a motion sensor outside B340 was triggered. The feed showed a faint white shape, moving from the door into the hall, then dissolving halfway through the frame. The part that unsettled investigators most wasn't the figure. It was the door handle. It turned slowly, as if being tested from the inside. But there was no one booked in the room that night, and security confirmed the door had been locked from the outside. Skeptics blamed humidity. Others said digital interference, but the staff who reviewed it said the same thing. It felt like the ship was watching itself. Researchers who studied the reports noticed something consistent. Most activity occurred between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., the so-called dead hours. And almost every witness mentioned water, dripping faucets, flooding, the sound of waves, or even the sensation of being underwater while still awake. The Queen Mary's pipes don't run through B340. There's no plumbing capable of producing that effect. So where does it come from? Some believe the energy trapped inside is connected to those lost sailors from the Curacoa collision, hundreds who drowned beneath the Queen Mary's hull, their voices echoing through the steel. Others think it's a psychic imprint, a feedback loop of trauma replaying endlessly, feeding off fear, and using B340 as its entry point. The longest anyone's lasted alone in B340 was just under 8 hours. That record belongs to a paranormal investigator from Texas named David Klein. He entered the room at midnight with 3 cameras and an EMF meter. At 7:46 a.m., the feed went dead. Security found him sitting in the corner staring at the door. He couldn't speak for nearly a full day. When he finally did, he said only, "It doesn't want the door open anymore." He never returned to the ship. Of course, not everyone believes in ghosts. Some experts suggest the entire phenomenon can be explained by infrasound, low-frequency vibrations caused by the ship's aging hull and nearby traffic, which can trigger nausea, panic, even hallucinations. Others say the magnetic fields from the Queen Mary's massive steel body distort brain activity during REM sleep, creating the illusion of a presence. But there's one thing science hasn't explained. Why the activity seems to stop whenever B340 is sealed again. Every time management closes it off, silence. Every time they reopen, chaos. It's as if the room itself decides when it wants to be seen. For decades, the Queen Mary has tried to turn her hauntings into business. Tours, horror events, themed stays. But behind the marketing, the staff who live with the ship every day still say the same thing. There's one place we don't go at night. And if you ever find yourself walking that corridor, past the silent cabins and the smell of rust and salt, you'll see it, a door with a fresh number plate. Brand new brass, polished daily. But the scratches on the inside, those were never sanded away. Every haunting, they say, begins with a story. But B340 feels different, like the story is feeding on the people who enter it. To understand why, you have to look at three possible explanations: psychological, environmental, and spiritual. 1. The psychological mirror. The first theory has nothing to do with ghosts. It says the room is a mirror, not a monster. In other words, it reflects whatever you bring inside. Think about it. When someone walks into B340, they already know the legends, the deaths, the screams, the scratched walls. Their adrenaline spikes, their heartbeat quickens, their brain floods with cortisol and fear. Inside that small, silent space, every creak becomes proof, every shadow becomes intent. The room doesn't need to be haunted, because you become the haunting. It's a phenomenon psychologists call environmental suggestion. Your brain projects the fear it expects to find, but even skeptics admit most rooms don't fight back, and B340 does. 2. The energy residue theory. The second theory comes from parapsychology, the idea that trauma leaves an electromagnetic fingerprint. Every violent event, every burst of emotion, imprints itself on physical matter like a photograph burned into film. The Queen Mary has witnessed over 60 confirmed deaths during her lifetime, not counting wartime casualties. The lower deck saw everything from industrial accidents to suicides. Steel, unlike wood, doesn't absorb moisture. It absorbs vibration, and vibration stores energy. In theory, if the same emotional wavelength keeps replaying fear, pain, death, it can create what researchers call a residual haunting, a kind of psychic echo that never learns, never changes, just loops endlessly, waiting for someone sensitive enough to hear it. B340, positioned directly above the engine room, acts like an amplifier. The constant hum of the ship's machinery provides a carrier frequency, a rhythm for those echoes to ride on. That could explain why so many guests describe hearing muffled voices beneath the floor, as if the ship itself is whispering from its bones. 3. The spiritual possession hypothesis. The third theory is older, much older. It comes from sailors' folklore, the belief that the ocean doesn't forget what it takes. Mariners used to say that when a ship witnesses enough death, it develops a soul of its own, a consciousness formed from collective grief. That spirit protects the vessel, but also punishes those who disrespect it. In that sense, B340 isn't just haunted, it's alive, not by one ghost, but by the memory of all of them. Every scream, every heartbeat, every drop of blood spilled at sea has been absorbed into its steel. When you sleep there, you're not alone in a room, you're inside the mind of the ship itself. Some mediums describe the Queen Mary as a psychic storm, a vortex of overlapping timelines. To them, time on the ship isn't linear, it's circular. Every night is every night that ever happened here, and B340 is the eye of that storm. The madness factor. But there's one final possibility. Maybe it's not the ship at all, maybe it's us. Humans weren't designed to live surrounded by endless water, cut off from land, sky, and ground. Even modern sailors talk about the hum, a constant low-frequency vibration that can drive a person insane after weeks at sea. Combine that with isolation, old wiring, flickering lights, and the psychological weight of history, and B340 becomes the perfect environment to unravel the mind. It's a pressure chamber of fear, memory, and suggestion, a place where the border between the conscious and the subconscious thins. In there, you don't just see shadows, you start to meet the parts of yourself you've buried, the parts that whisper, stay awake. Because if you fall asleep, something will take your place. The paradox of B340. Here's the paradox. If the room is only psychological, why do people with no prior knowledge still report the same events, the same sounds, the same sensations, the same words in the mirror? And if it's supernatural, why does it behave so logically? Quiet when sealed, violent when opened. Maybe both explanations are true. Maybe fear is the door, and energy is what walks through it. There's a reason so many investigators break down in that room. It's not just fear of ghosts, it's the confrontation with something more terrifying, the proof that reality might not be stable, that the dead can still speak, that the past can still touch you, and that belief itself might be enough to make the impossible real. The hallway is colder than the rest of the ship. That's the first thing you notice. It's not the kind of cold that comes from air conditioning, it's the kind that feels alive, like the air itself is watching you. The carpet changes texture near the end of the corridor, as if it's been replaced too many times to hide something beneath it. The brass numbers on the doors glow faintly in the dim light. B336, B338, and then nothing. Just a blank door, no number, no peephole, no welcome. Only silence. You slide the key into the lock. It hesitates, and almost like the metal doesn't want to turn. Then, with a click, the door opens. Inside the room, the air smells of rust and linen. Everything is still. There's a twin bed, a nightstand, a desk bolted to the wall, and a single round porthole that looks out over black water. The curtains don't move, yet you can hear wind. The moment you step inside, the hallway behind you fades. As if you've crossed some invisible line, you start recording. The red light on the camera flickers, then steadies. You speak softly just to hear your own voice fill the space. October 17th, 11:48 p.m. Room B340. I'm alone. The silence that answers is thick, almost physical. You set the EMF meter on the desk. A green light, no reading. For a moment, you think the legends are lies. Then, the ship shifts. A low groan rolls through the metal frame, and the green light flashes yellow. You tell yourself it's just vibration, just the ship settling. But your body knows better. Your skin tightens, your breath shortens. Something has changed. The first hour. At midnight, you hear the first sound, a steady knock from inside the wall behind the bed. 3 times. Pause. 3 more. You answer, tapping back. But the reply doesn't match your rhythm. It's ahead of you, like it already knows what you're going to do. You turn the camera toward the wall. Nothing. Then, a whisper. So faint you almost convince yourself it's the air vent. But it forms a word. Leave. You freeze. Your rational mind starts listing possibilities. Pipes, expansion, interference. But another part of you, older and deeper, just knows you're not alone. The second hour, 12:47 a.m. The porthole fogs over, even though the air is dry. You lean closer and see words forming in the condensation. They're backwards, written from the inside. 3 letters. Run. The EMF meter spikes red. A sudden bang from the bathroom door, so hard that dust falls from the ceiling. You shout, more out of reflex than courage. When you open the door, the light is on. The sink is dripping. The mirror reads, stay. You laugh nervously. So which is it? You whisper, run or stay. The room answers with a low hum, the same frequency you felt earlier in your bones. It rises, like pressure under your skin. You turn off the camera for a moment, just to catch your breath. When you look again, the red light turns itself back on. The third hour. At 2:03 a.m., the bed moves, not a shake, a slide. It shifts 3 inches toward the wall, as if something beneath it just pushed. You kneel down, shine your flashlight underneath. Only shadow, but in that shadow, 2 small handprints on the floor, wet, child-sized. You back away slowly. The door handle rattles once, it's twice, then stops. Outside, the hallway lights flicker. Your reflection in the mirror doesn't move when you do. It's smiling. You're not. You drop the flashlight. For one impossible second, you see another figure in the glass. A man in a sailor's uniform, face half gone, eyes wide and empty, standing right where you are. The 4th hour. You don't remember sitting down, but now you're on the floor beside the bed. The room has gone completely quiet. No creaks, no hum. Even the sea outside seems still. And then, from nowhere, a whisper right next to your ear. It's my room. Your body jerks. You turn. Nothing there. The temperature drops so fast your breath turns visible. You stumble toward the door, but the knob won't turn. It's cold, too cold to touch. You start to hit it, desperate now. Every strike echoes like you're inside a drum. And then, the door opens by itself. The hallway is empty. Light floods in. The air tastes of salt and metal. You step out, shaking. The moment you cross the threshold, everything stops. The hum returns. The ship breathes again. Behind you, the door closes softly. The number B340 glints faintly in the light, as if it had been there all along. The aftermath hours later, back on deck, you try to explain what happened. The staff listen politely. They've heard it all before. But when you mention the handprints, one of them, an older man with a badge that reads maintenance, goes pale. "We painted over those," he says quietly. "Years ago." He won't look you in the eye after that. You ask if anyone's staying in the room tonight. He shakes his head. "B340 doesn't need guests," he says. "It already has one." Every ghost story is really a story about the living. The Queen Mary isn't haunted because of death. She's haunted because of memory. Every scream, every secret, every heartbeat that ever echoed through her halls is still moving through the metal, looking for someone willing to listen. Room B340 is more than a location. It's a question. What happens to pain when we ignore it? Where does grief go when no one lets it speak? Does it disappear? Or does it sit quietly behind a locked door, waiting to be heard? Most people think fear is something to escape. But what if fear is just truth in disguise? When guests step into B340, they meet their own reflection, stripped bare, trembling, alive. In that moment, there's no pretending. The mind has nowhere to hide. And the ship, patient as ever, shows them what they've carried all along. The cold air, the footsteps, the whisper in the dark. Maybe those aren't ghosts at all. Maybe they're the fragments of every emotion we've buried. Regret, guilt, loneliness, all the things we never faced. Because in the end, a haunting isn't about what stays behind. It's about what refuses to be forgotten. The Queen Mary has crossed oceans of water and oceans of time. She's seen war, luxury, love, terror. She's carried kings and soldiers, laughter and death. And now she floats quietly, a museum of everything we try to forget. But if you stand on her deck at night and listen, really listen, you can hear something beneath the wind. A rhythm, a pulse, the heartbeat of a memory that refuses to die. It's not angry, it's not vengeful, it's just lonely. Maybe that's why people keep coming back to B340. Not to be scared, but to feel something real. To stand in the presence of the unknown and remember what it means to be alive. Because whether you believe in ghosts or not, there's something undeniably human about a place that reminds us how fragile we are. And when you walk away, heart pounding, the echo of footsteps still in your ears, you realize something powerful. The dead aren't the ones trapped on this ship. We are, trapped by our fears, our past, our need for control. B340 simply holds up the mirror, so the next time you hear a creak in the dark, or a chill runs down your spine for no reason, don't run. Listen, because maybe, just maybe, it's not a ghost trying to scare you. It's the universe reminding you. Everything leaves a trace, and some stories refuse to sink.